Live, guys.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Sircles Sports Hub. I'm here with my co-founder, Todd Fiore, and my great friend, Andrew Savine. You're listening live on the Sircles app. Sircles is a community-funded, community-owned tech startup built to be a positive, global platform for sharing, conversation, and good vibes. It's also a high-risk, high-reward investment opportunity, and we genuinely appreciate everyone who's supporting what we're building. Before we get started, I do need to read this verbatim. This Reg CF offering is made available through Start Engine Primary LLC, member FINRA SIPC. This investment is speculative, illiquid, and involves a high degree of risk, including the possible loss of your entire investment. All right, let's talk football, guys. Todd, you and I watched the morning game with Andrew. I was betting CJ Stroud to throw 1 pick, then 2 picks, then 3 picks, then 4, and made quite a bit of money doing it. It was pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, it was.
You guys enjoy that game?
It was a little ugly. I mean, it was enjoyable, especially with you getting that live action. But I would deem that one a little ugly, where I think both quarterbacks played extremely poorly. I'm somebody, like I think many people that watch at home, that enjoy watching good quarterback play, and CJ Stroud was certainly nowhere near that. But I would say that you and I really nailed that prediction, Danny, where I talked about his regression, and then, of course, you gave one of your locks that lined up with that.
The CJ Stroud under 212.5, which he landed right on 212. So that happens sometimes. Sometimes you lose by half a point. Sometimes you win by half a point. But obviously love being on that side of it. Last weekend was absolute chaos. 2 overtime games, defensive masterclasses, just pure playoff madness. We had some heartbreak. We had some wins. Andrew and I both backed the Bills. We thought the Team of Destiny run might continue, and they were right there. Josh Allen turned the ball over way too many times, and they came up short in overtime at Mile High. On the flip side, we had some good ones. Andrew nailed the Patriots covering against Houston. I was dead on with the CJ Stroud props. The tight end specials both cashed. Jake Tonjes went over his yardage before leaving the game. Dawson Knox cleared his line. We also got the Purdy interception. We got the longest field goal under 49.5 yards in the Bears-Rams game. It came in at 48 because Cairo Santos hit the 48-yarder. And we called the Jackson Smith and Jigba to score a touchdown in Seattle. He caught a 4-yard reception to start the game. But let's go back to that Bears game for just a second. Andrew, you had to split after the morning game. I went over to a Bears bar with Todd. I had action on the Rams money line, which we'll get into in a second because that was actually another one of your picks, Andrew. But I found myself rooting for the Bears because it was an all Bears bar. And Todd, what was it like as a Bears fan in there?
It's very rare. I don't see many Bears fans around town, and it's pretty unique when you find a fellow Bears fan. But to be at a place where nearly every single patron in that place was a Bears fan, it was really, really exciting.
It was. The energy when Caleb Williams drops back from like the 15-yard line back to the 50. I'm like, there's no way this is going to be a touchdown.
All right.
And then it flies over the head of the defender into Cole Kmet's hands in the back of the end zone. The whole place went crazy. I didn't know if I won, if I lost, what was going on. I didn't care because the vibes were just that good. And that's why we love football. I always say the NFL is like a soap opera for men. And
right.
Women watch too, but I also know men who watch Days of Our Lives. So love it.
Yeah, that was a fun game. I mean, it really, I'm a Bears fan, but I'm also a football fan. It was a great game. No shame in that loss whatsoever. But man, watching that fourth down times ticking away, as soon as Caleb got chased back to the backfield, I pretty much thought, well, that's the game. But somehow he turned it around, and like you said, dropped that pass in the back of the end zone, and that entire bar just lit up with new life. It was really fun. So, yeah, great game. I would say that was a good loss. It wasn't a bad one. So there's always next year.
Yeah, it's hard to be upset about that. Now, was that it for the Bears? Can they make it back?
Damn good question. I think with the I really like what Ben Johnson's been doing with the team, and I feel like the offensive line and their runners with Swift and Menenge. They just got to be more consistent. I feel like they've been really relying on a lot of these big risky plays to get themselves back into a game, and that's really hard to maintain throughout the season and win. So hopefully they can be more consistent here this next season. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they sure do like elevating the drama to finish games. I mean, there were 5 or 6 games that came down to the end. The Bengals, the Niners. I mean, it was like every weekend the Packers go, up by overtime. So I'm rooting for them. Though they have a strong quarterback. The defense is solid. I love Ben Johnson as well. Andrew, do you think the Bears can make it back?
Well, I do think that they do have the 2 most important things in today's NFL, which is an elite head coach and maybe an elite quarterback. I mean, that remains to be seen. But if he continues to progress in the way he did in this year under Ben Johnson, then Caleb Williams might be the real deal. So if he continues to progress and Ben Johnson is firing those play calls in there. But there is one thing that was weird about that game, Danny, that I just want to comment on real quick before we move on. And that is, for what I would consider to be 2 of the best offensive coaches in the NFL, I thought they both called a poor game. I'm not 100% sure what Sean McVay was doing. And I think that if I was at the bar with you guys, despite my own action, I might have started rooting for the Bears too, because the Bears almost deserved to win that game, because it seemed to me like McVay was trying to lose it. I don't understand that their success rate on running plays was, from the beginning of the game and throughout the back half of the season, was like exceeding their success rate on their passing plays. Yet how many times did they come out and they're just pass. And you and I both liked the running backs in this game for the Rams, Danny, and I just thought that they were massively underutilized. Now, fortunately, one of my bets that was related to those running backs came through. I had, if you guys remember from our first show, I had 2 separate 2-team parlays, and I did not like the +3.5. I thought that it might be a tight game, and that ended up being a great call because it was a 3-point game at the end. So I had the Rams money line tied to a Blake Corum TD that did not come in. That was a little over 3-1 that I was getting on that one. And then I had the Rams money line tied to a Kyron Williams TD. And I got a little less than 3-1 on that. And that one did come in. So despite me going 1 and 2 in bets right there, I was lucky to come out ahead on that one.
Okay, so let's break that down for the average listener real quick. You bet 100 on the Rams money line and Kyron Williams to score a touchdown. That wins. What's the profit there?
So that won 280. So it was a plus 280 is the way you would see it in sports books.
Okay, and then you give 100 back on the Rams and Corum because Corum didn't get in the end zone. So you end up profiting 180 on those 2 bets.
Correct.
Okay, but if Corum scores, that's another 300 plus.
Yeah, then it's a nice big hit. But McVay was not on my team on this particular occasion because I thought he vastly underutilized Corum, and I even thought he underutilized Kyron Williams as well. Just some weird play calling, and that just goes to show you the unpredictability of this stuff sometimes, because I think that a lot of sharp people thought those running backs were going to get a lot of action. I know a lot of sharps were on all sorts of Blake Corum props, and all those bit the best.
Agreed. Do you think the Bears should have gone for 2 after scoring that touchdown?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So even though I think that Ben Johnson had some questionable play calling on the offensive side of the ball throughout the game, that was not a questionable call. And the reason is because their defense was holding up. So if the only way they're converting that final touchdown is by on some miracle play, like which is better? Is it better to utilize your defense one more time that has been holding the Rams to almost nothing, or gamble up and go for this like 50-50 at best play when like your offense has not really been humming through the game? So I thought that out of all the questionable decisions that Ben Johnson may or may not have made in that game, that was not one of them. I think that he did the right thing right there, and that you put your defense back on the field when they were performing the way they were.
I think so too. It's hard to say. Hindsight is 20/20, and there's part of me that goes, well, the momentum was through the roof right there. The Rams are probably feeling pretty defeated. Like, how did we give that up? And then you have the opportunity to stick the fork in them. But at the same time, that same momentum is going to carry you into the overtime as well. So hard to hate on that decision. All right, let's get into this week. First game on our slate here is Patriots at Broncos. I think I read the Broncos have won 14 out of their last 15 at Mile High Stadium, but the Patriots are 8-0 on the road this year. Something's got to give. Let's start with who you like winning the game.
Oh, well, that's a tough place to start because if you don't mind, I'd rather first talk about it in terms of the spread, because that's where my investment will be, and that's where most of my analysis has been. Okay, so the line this week, with Bo Nix going down at the end of the game last weekend, as I'm sure everybody that's bothering to listen to this already knows, Bo Nix broke a bone in his ankle, and he is out for the postseason. So in comes Jarrett Stidham, and Jarrett Stidham, as any of you got football junkies may remember, was originally thought to be the Tom Brady replacement. He was actually drafted by New England, and there is a little bit of a carryover there because Josh McDaniels was on the staff when New England chose to draft him. He was a big part of that decision, and Josh McDaniels is back in New England calling the offensive plays. So even though Josh McDaniels is on the offensive end of the game planning, I'm sure that his insight on Stidham is being used in their preparation this week. So with the quarterback situation, the line opened at 5.5. Now, this is my first bit of commentary on that. Imagine a world, Danny, where Bo Nix did not get injured and Bo Nix was the starting quarterback this week. What do you think the line would have been if it was Bo Nix starting this week, Broncos hosting Patriots, after the Patriots not looking awesome against a really horrible performance by the Houston Texans? What do you think it would have been?
I think it would have been Broncos -1.5, although I would call it a pick'em game personally. But yeah, I think it would have been Denver -1.5.
So I think you're almost right. I think that the line probably would have been exactly where we see the line in the NFC Championship this weekend. I think it would have been at 2.5. So, but we can use 1.5 or we can use 2.5. But either one that you use, when you go from across the zero all the way up to +5.5, which is where it opened this week, that is the bookmakers telling you that Bo Nix is worth 7 points. Now, Bo Nix is not a top 10 quarterback in the league, and he's probably not a top 20 quarterback in the league. He is not worth 7 points by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that the books know that. And last week in the Bills game, I talked about the fact that the line was kind of speaking to me, but you and I, we refused to listen. The money was heavy on the Bills, yet the line was going in the opposite direction. Well, this week, Danny, I am listening, because despite the Broncos opening up as a 5.5-point underdog, and the majority of the money, almost 70% of the hold, coming in on the Patriots, the line has actually gone in the opposite direction that you would expect. It has gone down. And today I'm seeing 4s all over the place. Yesterday when I made my official picks and my notes for today, it was at 4.5 still. So that is the number that I'm using for my pick. But based on what the line movement is telling me, based on the fact that I don't think that Bo Nix versus Jarrett Stidham is a 7-point difference, and based on the fact that Sean Payton is a play calling genius, that's and the way I expect him to open up both the beginning of the game and the second half with his script of 10 to 20 plays that he likes to run. I mean, I think that there's a lot of quarterbacks back there that can succeed, and I think Jarrett Stidham might be one of them. And of course, this could blow up in my face, but my official pick is strongly Broncos +4.5.
I don't feel strongly about either side of the spread in that game, but I understand your logic and listening to the line movement. It makes a lot of sense to me. But this Patriots defense is a really underrated unit. They're healthy. They're rolling. They're allowing 9.5 points per game in 2 playoff wins. They've had 25 opponent possessions in the playoffs and only 1 touchdown given up. They're disguising coverages extremely well. And the Broncos have some health problems at center. I'm reading that all 3 of their potential centers have injury issues. And I don't know who starts the game at center. So if the Patriots can get pressure up the middle, I think that creates a huge problem for a pocket passer like Jared Stidham. But I could see it going either way. I just don't really feel strongly as far as choosing a side with the spread here.
And I understand your concerns at the center position. However, the Broncos offensive line is not like, say, the Niners offensive line, where it's like when Trent Williams was out or Trent Williams wasn't healthy, like it's a little bit of a disaster, right? This is not a one-man show or even a two-man show. The Broncos offensive line is an elite unit in the NFL, and that is one of the reasons why I like them. And then obviously the other reason that I like them so much does have to do with Sean Payton. And just one little tidbit trend for everybody that likes to think in these terms when they're making their action. Sean Payton has covered in his entire career, both teams he's coached, at a 67% rate when he is a dog of 3 points or more. And that is historically great. And I think that the reason I wanted to talk about the spread as far instead of who I think is going to win the game is because my strong feeling is on Sean Payton and the Broncos being able to cover this line. As a gambler, I will be taking a little bit of action on the Broncos for the upset win as well. However, that is not a bet that I am making with with full unit, with a full unit play. And just real quick for the audience, when I say a full unit play, if you are the type of bettor that likes to say bet $50 on a game. So on a normal game where you're picking one side or the other, you bet $55 to win 50 on X team winning by this many points. That's a straight bet. And if that's your average straight bet, then I would say that your unit size is $50. That is akin to what I will be putting on Broncos plus 4.5. However, when I bet them in a play that we'll talk about later, where the money line is involved, that will be a partial unit play, something like 10 to 20% of your full unit. So instead of like $50, you're $10 or $15. But Broncos will be a full unit play for me with the spread, with the 4.5 points.
Well, do you think the Broncos will be able to run the ball in this game? I think Woody Marks had 17 yards on 14 carries against the Patriots. Chubb had 14 yards on 4 carries. Do you see the Broncos doing any better?
Not really. And I know that's funny to say because they're the side I like. I don't expect them to run the ball with a huge amount of success, but I also don't expect Sean Payton to let it affect his play calling that he has a backup quarterback in there. I think that he is going to call a pass-heavy offense like he always does. I mean, Sean Payton historically has called games in a way that I think the average coach or the average viewer at home would determine to be reckless. However, his success is unquestionable. And actually, the fact that I don't like the rushing in this game kind of leads into our props section, which if you're ready to get into, Danny, I got something good for you.
Let's go there because I agree with you that Peyton's going to sling it. I think you're going to see Stidham firing the ball a lot. And Stidham is capable in the pocket. He played for the Raiders, and I saw him put up multiple, high 200-yard passing games, maybe even into the 3s. So this is a professional veteran quarterback, and he's very capable. But I do think he's going to throw a pick in this game just because of the passing volume he's going to have. So Stidham to throw a pick will be one of my props, and I'm not sure what I'm going to tie it to. Probably Mac Hollins over 24.5 receiving yards. But there is one we both like, and if you want to get into why and share that pick, let's go there next.
Yeah. So the one that we are in strong agreement on is RJ Harvey, the Broncos running back. And as we've already acknowledged, running against the Patriots, not a big option. However, when a quarterback is in the situation that Jared Stidham is going to be in, Outlet passes on both planned and unplanned play to the running back out of the backfield is a common go-to. And that is what I expect to see this weekend. I expect to see RJ Harvey catch several balls. And I think that this line is super juicy. Now, it was even juicier at the beginning of the week. RJ Harvey, 19.5 receiving yards. Now, since then, J.K. Dobbins has been officially ruled out. Even though he was trying to make a comeback, he was practicing a little bit. He is out. Now, Dobbins was probably not going to get those catches. He's more of the rushing back. Harvey's a little more of the receiving back. However, he would have taken snaps away from Harvey. But without that in there, all the books have done here is bump it from 19.5 to 21.5. And I still love it at that number. So the official play here, Danny, is RJ Harvey over 21.5 receiving yards.
I like that pick as well. I think Stidham's going to have to get the ball out quick. I think you're going to see the Patriots go into a lot of man-to-man defense because last week the Broncos were using their screen game quite a bit. I don't think he'll be able to just go down the field early on against the Patriots. I think they're going to have to get it out to Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton really quickly. And that's going to leave some opening if the linebacker is not following RJ Harvey around for some, sideline receiving passes or maybe something over the middle. And it doesn't take much for him to get over 21.5 yards. The guy breaks tackles in the open field. He's quick. It could happen on one reception, but I like him to get, 2 or 3 receptions and go over 21.5. That might be pick of the week right there.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Even if it doesn't go exactly the way we are imagining, he can get that yardage on one good reception. So that is the reason that I like the yards better than the receptions. However, if somebody had like a 2.5 reception line, I wouldn't hate that. It's just not something I feel as strongly about as the yardage.
I like the yards better as well. How do you think special teams factors into this game? The Patriots have Marcus Jones. He's averaging 14.3 yards per punt return. He's got 2 touchdowns on the year. Marvin Mims on the other side, also an explosive return threat. I feel like special teams might win the game.
Yeah, and I feel like they have good kickers. I do like, now this is not an official pick, but I think that if you're trying to put a ticket together, if you guys are on one of these sites like Sleeper or Prize Picks or one of those where you got to put some things together, I don't mind something like over 1.5 field goals made by either kicker on either side, because I do think that there will be some movement of the ball, but I think that these defenses are both stout, and I think that this is going to be a tight game, and that in the elevation with a couple good kickers, that the ball will be going through the uprights a few times.
I agree with that. Speaking of Sleeper, if you are on these apps like Sleeper or Prize Picks, you really want to know what you're doing if you're going to be on these apps. They don't give you true odds, and neither one of us recommend you're putting 4 and 5 team tickets together unless you're using some bonuses. Try to keep it to 2 teams. It is really hard to hit 3, 4, and 5 leg parlays. It's fun if you're doing it for $5, $10. It's a fun way to gamble, but we don't recommend it. Stick to 2 teams. Use the bonuses; they're your friend. And if you're new to that platform, you can send me a DM. I have a code that will give you like $100 deposit match on your first deposit.
Yeah, that's some good advice, Danny.
Cool. All right. Well,
I do. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do have one more prop. Unless you're, do you have any more props, Danny?
Not in that game. No.
Okay, I got one of my good long shot props here. Okay. And I think that for the listeners at home, especially you guys that played fantasy and kind of like keep up on like who the number 1 guy in each skill position is, if I asked you guys about the Broncos tight end situation, the answers I would get from the vast majority of people would be concerning Evan Ingram. However, over the last few weeks, some interesting things have happened where Adam Troutman, who at least on the depth chart is number 2 still, has really kind of risen into the number 1 role in relationship, not necessarily just to his like on paper production, but onto like the more advanced statistics like routes ran and offensive snaps. And last week, Adam Troutman was well over 80% used on the offensive snaps, whereas Evan Ingram was close to 50%. Now, somebody that knows ball might say, well, that's because Adam Troutman does a little more blocking. And that is true. However, the real distinguishing factor in this bet that I'm about to give out, Danny, is that Troutman, by almost a 6-1, it was either 6-1 or 6-2. I'm sorry, I don't have that in my notes, but by a significant amount, had more red zone routes run than Evan Ingram. So that brings me to my long shot prop here. And once again, this is like somewhere between like a 10th of a unit and a 20th of a unit. This is just a sprinkle. And this is Adam Troutman to score a TD. Now, this opened up at 12-1 this week. I bet it yesterday, unfortunately, at 9-1. Now, the reason for this movement is because I did not come up with this pick. This is a pick that has been touted by several sharps on the internet, including a couple guys we like over at the Action Network. And once those guys give out a pick, it's very common for the line to drop. However, I think at 9-1, you are still getting good value on this. He was in there last week on almost every red zone opportunity. And the other non-tangible thing here is the fact that Adam Troutman and Jarrett Stidham ran second team reps at practice for a lot of the season. So Jarrett Stidham is familiar with Adam Troutman, and I do think that he's going to utilize him in a way that we maybe have not seen before. There is one other straight bet. This is not an official play, but if you are on one of those sites like you were discussing, Danny, Adam Troutman is available at over 1.5 receptions. He's gotten 2 or 3 receptions on multiple occasions throughout the entire year, even before this increased usage and before Jarrett Stidham came into the picture. So I can see him clearing that one as well.
I like both of those picks as well. I do think you're going to see Evan Ingram on the field a little bit more in this one, just because I think they're going to be going pass heavy. Troutman's an excellent run blocker, so I agree that he's going to be in the game when they're in the red zone, moving off of play action. So at 9-1, I still like it.
Cool.
You know, speaking of snap counts, there is actually a prop on the Patriots side of things that I like. Kayshon Boutte was on the field for 83% of snaps last week. I think it would be easy to fall for the trap of taking him over his receptions and his yards in this game, and he may have a big game. He's going to be in single coverage man-to-man a lot, and I think Drake May is going to put up some 50-50 balls to him. So I don't hate the pick of Boutte, but I expect Mac Hollins to return from injury here. He's 6'4", big target. I saw his line at 24.5, which is where I grabbed it, and now I'm seeing it at 27.5. which tells me the action is coming in on the side I like. I still like it over 27.5. He can get it in 1 reception. I expect it will take at least 2, but Mac Hollins over 24.5 or 20 up to 27.5. I like that pick as well.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the only drawback is that this is a guy returning from injury, and you never know how healthy these guys exactly are when they return from injury. And before we move on to the other game, Danny, I actually do have something I like a little bit on the Patriots side. I know that for the fans at home, if you guys decide to back the Patriots, which, you know, if you want to do that despite my arguments, I'm totally cool with, you might actually want to dabble in a little bit of Patriots props as well. So in addition to your Hollins prop, I am looking favorably upon Hunter Henry over 42.5 yards receiving. And I think he was underutilized last week, and not really from a game plan perspective. I think that he got underutilized because of just the weird flow of the game with the immense amount of turnovers and the immense amount of like weird distances on the fields the teams were left. I think that if we see a more classic game played between the 20s here, that Hunter Henry is going to get a lot more action than we saw last weekend.
I'm a huge Hunter Henry fan. That's a big yardage line, but I might grab him to score just as a little sprinkle. Patriots to win the game, Hunter Henry to score. I do think the Patriots are going to win the game, but I'm undecided betting it either way. I was leaning towards the under of 43.5, even considered buying it up to 46.5 and taking the under there. And buying it up, for those of you that don't know, you can pay a little extra juice. You might pay $110 to win 100, taking it under 43.5. Whereas you can buy the line up to 46.5 and go under, and you may pay like 135 or 145. So you are paying a little extra juice, but the juice only matters if you lose.
Well said.
So, all right. That's the early game. Let's get into this afternoon game. We've got the Rams going to Lumen Field to play the Seahawks. This will be their third matchup of the year. These are division rivals. Both games came down to the final play. The first one of the season ended with Jason Myers attempting a 60-plus yard field goal that was pushed wide. The second game, late in the season, Darnold threw a bunch of picks. I think the Rams went into the fourth quarter up 2 scores. There was a really controversial 2-point conversion, and the Seahawks pulled off like the comeback of the year, which really surprised me. It felt like the Rams, to me, it felt like the Rams just kind of took their foot off the gas and got comfortable and gave that one up. But what do you think about this next game?
So first, I'll just talk about it from the line perspective again to start this, Danny. And that is the Seahawks opened as a 1.5-point favorite very early in the week, and the line quickly went to 2.5. There was even several hours on one day where you could find some threes out there, but the books quickly came off the 3 once they drew in a bunch of Rams action on the 3, and the line has settled and been settled for many days at Seahawks minus 2.5. From a line and straight bet perspective, it's funny that you brought up the idea of buying points, Danny, because this is my plan for this game, which is I will spend the minus 120 to minus 130 that it will cost me to have the Rams at +3. Now, if you guys are on a site or in a brick and mortar casino that is charging something like minus 140, minus 150, I would just stay away from it. I think that long term, when you start laying big amounts like that, big minus money bets, the almost already impossible feat of profiting at sports becomes even more impossible. So I would put minus 130 as my limit on this. So that's Rams +3 with a cost of minus 120 to minus 130.
I like it. The Rams have 5 losses this year. They lost by 7, 3, 3, 1, and 3. They keep games close even when they lose. Seattle is averaging 160 yards per game over the last 4 games on the ground. And I expect them to run over 50% of the time. The Kubiak offense, he takes an old school approach. They're heavy under center, 2 tight ends, 2 backs. They like to force defenses into their base defense and run this outside zone. That's going to be a little trickier with only having Kenneth Walker in the backfield. There's a trend in the NFL right now. We're seeing a lot of really good teams that have this 2-headed monster in the backfield. You've got, Corum and Kyron. You've got Monangai and Swift. And then with the Seahawks, you've got Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. And they're down Zach Charbonnet with that torn ACL. So that makes it a little trickier for them. I expect Kenneth Walker to get a really heavy workload. And I expect them to run some play action off of it, looking for Jackson Smith and Jigba over the middle or wherever they can find him. And I do expect him to get open. But that's one reason I love taking the points in this game. I don't see Darnold airing it out the entire game unless they're trailing, in which case taking the points is still smart. But if they get a lead, I think you're going to see them keep it on the ground as much as they can, run play action off of it. And I don't see them building up a big lead unless there's like this defensive touchdown or special teams touchdown that just makes things weird.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. And furthermore, you mentioned that obviously these teams have played each other twice and they're both close games. I would consider, I would say that McVay and the Rams had the better of it from a coaching and a productivity standpoint in both games, even though they split 1-1. The one that the Seahawks won was, bizarro land. But in both of those games, the Rams really, really pressured Darnold. And Darnold actually threw, I think I'm getting this right, 6 interceptions between the 2 games. Is that right, Danny?
He did. It was 4 in one of them and 2 in the other.
Yeah. So anyway, that brings me to my first prop, and I would like to say this with the same confidence and hopefully the same success that Danny said his CJ Stroud prediction last weekend, which is Sam Darnold to throw an interception. And obviously, if you are partaking in this bet on one of these sites like Sleeper or Prize Picks, you're going to have to find that something like that to tie it to. If you are betting it straight on a different type of site or in a casino, then you are going to look at a small minus money situation here. So once again, similar to my straight bet on the game, I would take it all the way up to minus 130. If you're laying more than minus 130, despite the fact that I am touting it as my number one prop for this game, I would stay away, just because once again, if you're planning on betting with any sort of frequency, you do not want to be in the habit of laying those big minus numbers.
Agreed. I'm going to be tying it to something in the early game so that if we get the first leg in, that's, really all we're rooting for on the Dalton interception, or the Darnold interception, sorry. But I'll probably double down on it if that first leg wins, or rebet it with something else in the second game if the first leg doesn't hit in that Pats Broncos game. Speaking of the Rams applying pressure to Darnold, I read an interesting stat, or maybe I saw Gruden talking about it. Kobe Turner, 91 of the Rams. He's got a 43% pressure rate when he's on the field. 43% of the time he's on the field, he's got the quarterback dancing around in the pocket looking for where to go. When he's off the field, the opposing quarterback is under pressure 27% of the time. That's a 16% drop off. That's huge and makes a big difference. Plus, the Rams have Jared Verse and Byron Young on the edges. I expect Arnold to be under a lot of pressure during this game again. In addition to that, there are left tackle issues for the Seahawks. Charles Cross has a foot injury. He left the Niner game in the third quarter. Josh Jones was inactive last week, and Amari Knight has a knee injury. He didn't practice. Plus, Darnold's managing an oblique injury. I don't know how serious it is. The Toradol will probably kick in quickly for him. But we talked about the center issues for the Broncos. Do you think this left tackle issue the Seahawks are facing is going to be a bigger factor than the Broncos losing their centers?
Absolutely. First of all, just like, the edge versus up the middle. Secondly, I think as a unit, the Broncos O-line as a complete unit is just superior to the Seahawks O-line. So even if it was a 1-to-1 situation, which I don't believe it is, I would still say that it would affect the weaker unit more. And they're going up against the stronger unit, because even though the Patriots have a outstanding, like borderline historical good run defense, their pressure rate is not as great as those numbers that you just gave out for the Rams when they are at full strength. So there is a difference between getting in the backfield and putting pressure on the quarterback versus being able to stop each run at a 1-yard gain. So those are two different slightly styles of defense. And I think that the defense that Seattle is going to be facing is going to really punish them if they have any problem on the edges.
Agreed. There's a psychological effect to it as well as a quarterback. When you know your blind side left tackle is injured, for those of you who don't know what the blind side is, a right-handed quarterback, the blind side will be the left tackle, because that edge rusher is coming around to your back. If you're a left-handed quarterback, it's on the opposite side. So when you're in the pocket, you have left tackle issues, you just rush decisions by a fraction of a second, and it makes a big difference. I do think the turnover battle is where this game is decided. The Rams have plus 11 turnover margin, 26 takeaways, 15 giveaways. The Seahawks are minus 3. They have 28 giveaways, and 20 of them are by Darnold.
Great stat, Danny.
I've got some more stats for you. I'm just going to share them. They make a big difference here, and why
fire them in there.
Look, when I looked at this game and I saw what they did to the Niners, the Seahawks, I was like, man, how do you pick against Seattle right now? They're at home. They're on fire. They're young. They're healthy. They're flying all over the field. They've got the shell defense they play with two safeties, and they're just going to make it really, really hard. But Stafford has 13 TDs in the fourth quarter and 1 interception. He's got a 117.9 quarterback rating late in games. Against the blitz, he's got 32 touchdowns and 1 interception. And in the red zone, 24 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Seattle likes to blitz a lot. They have an amazing defensive line as well, maybe better than the Rams. But Stafford is 37 years old. He's been in the league for a while. He's really poised, and I see him breaking down this defense and keeping the ball moving. And I don't think Seattle's going to be able to run for 160 yards against the Rams with one back. So it's just really hard to lay points with Seattle, given these stats and metrics and knowing Seattle's going to have a tougher time on the ground here. And then Darnold, this is the biggest game of his life, NFC Championship. He's known for kind of caving under pressure in big games. He got his first playoff win against the Niners, which was really impressive, but it's hard to give points. Plus, I did pick the Rams to go to the Super Bowl, albeit against the Bills, and I'm sticking to it. I took the Rams on a futures bet, so some of this is betting with my heart, but the metrics back it up.
Yeah, and I'll just say when that quarterback comparison, you're talking about on one side is a very middle of the road starter. I mean, I would quantify Sam Darnold as somewhere between number 12 and number 22. Whereas on the other side, not only are we talking about the likely 2025 MVP after his previous Super Bowl run with the Rams and what I think will be a Super Bowl run this year, he is a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. And I still remember like yesterday, it was man, is this guy a Hall of Famer? But he is even despite the results of this game. But yeah, I love me some Matthew Stafford, and I am very suspect of some Sam Darnold, and that is certainly part of this decision. I do have one more prop for this game before we move on, Danny.
Yeah, let's get to props. I've got 1 or 2 here in this game as well.
Okay, so I already gave out my Sam Darnold interception. That's one of my favorite ones of the weekend. My other favorite one of the weekend is also in this game. So if I had to rank my 3 favorite props, Sam Darnold would be number 1. The RJ Harvey receiving that I gave out previously would be number 3. So coming in at number 2 is Kyren Williams over 13.5 receiving yards. As we talked about with the ability for the Broncos to rush against the Patriots, I also think that the Rams will have a hard time running the ball against Seattle. I mean, Seattle and New England are very comparable in the sense that they do not give up very much rushing. However, Kyren Williams has shown throughout the entire year, but especially down the stretch and in the playoff run so far, to be a very good receiving back and a very dependable outlet for Matthew Stafford. This actually opened this week at 11.5. And this is another one of those bets that I feel like there's a few sharp guys on that are putting their thoughts out there on the internet. So it has slowly risen up. I got it at 13.5. It's currently at 14.5. I would play it all the way up to 15.5. And I'll also be playing this bet straight on a non-parlay site with an escalator. And what I mean by an escalator is I'm going to divvy my bet up. So once again, using the scenario where you are a $50 bettor. If you have $50 that you want to place on this Kyren Williams, I would do about 35 to win 30 on the over 13.5. But then I would do a little sprinkle on 20 plus yards receiving, which will get you plus 150. And then I would do another little sprinkle on 30 plus yards receiving, which gets you all the way up to plus 310. So a 3-to-1 shot for a number that he has hit twice over the last 5 games. And in his last 5 games, he was 30 yards receiving last weekend, 18 the previous, 21 before that, 38 again. And then his worst in the last 5 games was the 15 even. And that's obviously when you look at that, you're like, oh, if it goes to 15.5, maybe I don't like it. But, you know, the 30s are what stands out to me more because those were games that the Rams had to win. So that is my favorite prop besides the Sam Darnold interception in this game. I'll be taking it multiple ways. I'll be taking it on sleeper at the baseline, and then, like I said, I will be taking it 20 plus and 30 plus straight on another source.
I like the baseline pick. And these escalators are really, really fun when you start hitting them, because as soon as you clear the first number, you're basically free rolling.
Free roll.
Yeah, it gets really fun as you start winning them. The thing that concerns me about him trying to clear 30 yards is just how fast the Seattle defense can close in. But he's another guy who can break a couple tackles or just break one big 50-yard reception off. So it's a fun gamble. I like it. Speaking of gambles, this would be like a 1/10 of a unit play here for me. I like AJ Barner to get in the end zone. He's a tight end. He gets a lot of red zone targets, but he also comes in for the tush push for Seattle. So if they're on like the 1 or 2 yard line, you may see him line up under center, take the snap, and just run right up the middle. So he's got 10 attempts in the red zone running that tush push and 8 touchdowns. So again, that's a sprinkle. It's a gamble, but that's my long shot in this game.
I like it.
And then I'll be following your Kyron Williams over, was it 13.5 right now?
13.5 is what I got it at previously. On sleeper, at least, it's at 14.5 now. And like I said, I'm willing to play it all the way up to 15.5.
Cool. Me too. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat here before we wrap it up. But does anyone have any questions? Let's give a couple seconds. Anyone want to ask something here in the Sircles Sports Hub chat? And while we're on the Sircles topic, we would not be able to do this live show here without the app and without this live streaming, without Todd jumping in here at 3:00 on a Saturday to help produce this and record it as well for everybody. If you're looking to gamble up at all, we do have our Sircles Start Engine campaign open at startengine.com/Sircles. Investments are risky. You can lose your entire investment. We've been very clear and transparent about this from day one, but we appreciate your support. This is how Sircles survives. And if we can continue surviving and thriving, we will be here doing more of these shows, not just covering sports. We'll be covering a wide range of topics with different speakers and guests. I have spoken to Steve Mickelson over at Mix Picks. It's possible he'll be joining us for our Super Bowl episode, so stay tuned on that. And I know John is excellent at investing in the stock market. He'll be doing an investment stream that I'll probably join him on. We'll probably talk UFOs, aliens, all kinds of different fun topics just to continue engaging our audience here. So again, that's startengine.com/Sircles. The campaign just launched a few weeks ago. And if you are a repeat investor, you get 50% bonus shares on your investment. Plus, there are some additional perks running through the 25th of January, which is approaching really quickly. So I would encourage you to take a look quickly if that's something you're interested in. But with that said, go Rams. Let's hit the props. I do a lot live during the games. I didn't drop everything in the chat last week, but I will be dropping more in this week. So keep your eyes on the Sircles Sports Hub chat for some live action tips. Good luck, everybody. This is gambling. It's high risk. There's a reason I did not say, yes, I'm really confident on one side or the other that first game. It's because I'm not. And the best way to lose money sports betting is to get in and act like you're super confident in every single pick. It can go sideways really, really fast. So gamble responsibly. If you have any questions, I'm available in the app. You can DM me or hit me up in the Sircles Sports Hub chat. Todd, Andrew, thank you both for joining today. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to the Super Bowl episode.
Danny, thank you for having me, buddy. And before we go, I would just like to leave us with one final gamble that I think people might be interested in. We did not do our official predictions for Santa Clara, and I do think it's important that we get that in there before we sign off, Danny. So
I do too, and you just reminded me of something crazy I want to bring back. So go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to leave this thing off. And once again, these plays are very speculative. And you guys know that I like the Broncos to cover the number in the first game. And I do like some gambling opportunities that a lucky Broncos win can provide you with. Okay. And these are two things I have invested in. Once again, these were not full unit investments. The first one is an exacta pick of Broncos versus Rams in the Super Bowl. And for that, I got plus 614, which means I got over 6-1 on my money for essentially a two-teamer that I deem to be very feasible. Staying in line with that possible matchup in Santa Clara, the other real interesting thing floating around out there is Jared Stidham, Super Bowl MVP, 20-1. So if you're that $100 better, you can sprinkle a tenth of unit, a little $10 bet on that, and boom, you have the opportunity to spike 200. And if not everything lines up perfectly, you lost the amount of a cup of Starbucks. So that's a fun one.
If you think the Broncos can win it, the MVPs often do go to the quarterback. So
for sure,
21's a great number. But your prediction lines up with this other crazy thing I wanted to mention before we sign off. Many months ago, Oz the Mentalist. You guys know who Oz the Mentalist is?
Yes.
Yep, sure do.
He does these crazy magic tricks and, goes in, sits down with the team, and he'll tell the quarterback, hey, throw the ball to this guy, then throw the ball to someone else, and he'll write the name down of who it's going to before the quarterback even throws it. Many months ago, he was in the Rams locker room, and he goes, imagine you just won the Super Bowl. Who are you playing? And he asks Devontae Adams, and he goes, you were thinking about the Broncos, weren't you? Or actually, I don't even think he said it. He says, you were thinking about the Broncos, weren't you? And Devontae turns the sign around and it says Broncos. And he's like, what was the score of that game? And he turns it over and he goes 23-14 before Adams even turns it around. That would be a crazy prediction if this ends up 23-14 Rams in the Super Bowl. I'm going to start thinking there's some woo going on if that happens, but it's worth a sprinkle.
Now that's a real exacta. Both teams, exact score.
At that time, you would have a hard time believing that was even a potential matchup that could take place in the Super Bowl. Everybody knew both teams were good, but thinking those teams were going to battle, both of them, all the way through their conferences to the championship round would have been a really tough prediction to make at that time. So in my view, he's already done an excellent job with his prediction of Rams Broncos in the Super Bowl. So if it ends up 23-14, though, I'm going to start questioning a lot of things about reality.
Danny, it was fun. Thank you guys.
It was.
Yep.
You enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, Andrew, Danny, thanks. Appreciate you guys. And everyone listening, thanks so much for participating and joining in. We'll do it again here soon.
All right, let's do it.
All right,
Okay,
see you,
everyone.
Thanks a lot, guys. And